What follows in this video are 20 tactics that form an effective overall strategy for success in grappling on the mat. Now, each grappling sport will certainly have its own specific points directly related to the rules of that sport or the focus of that sport, and as a result, some of these tactics may or may not apply to a specific grappling or combat sport. But for the most part, these 20 tactics have proven to be useful and effective over the years that people have engaged in grappling and combat sports. Hope you enjoy the video. Always work to control the position. If you are in a superior position in relation to your opponent and to where you are located on the mat, you will be in a better position to secure a winning move. The old saying, control the position and get the submission, is true. Mobility is essential in effective ground fighting. Always work to limit your opponent's mobility while at the same time increasing your ability to move freely. This includes controlling the body space or amount of space between you and your opponent. There are always body gaps in ground fighting. This is the actual space between you and your opponent at any given point on the body. Control these body gaps as often as possible. Controlling the position also includes controlling the tempo or pace of the action. Depending on the situation and what you want to do with it, you will alter or change the pace of how fast events take place. Make every effort to control how fast or slow you want your action to take place. Make every effort to control every phase of grappling in that situation. Always work to improve your position and gain more control over your opponent. And always work to break your opponent down from a stable to an unstable position or situation. Now, breakdown is when you take your opponent from his stable base and gain control over him. You may break him down to a flat, face-down and prone position, or you may break him down by turning him over onto his back, or you may break him down doing another position where you are in control. By always working to improve your position, you will eventually put him and you in a position that is most ideal for you to apply a finishing hold, submission, technique, or a pin. Everything is a handle. Use every part of your opponent's body or uniform, as well as every part of your body or uniform, to grab, grip, hold, and manipulate, get control, maintain control, and get more control over your opponent. Always work to gain and maintain a stable yet fluid base. Use all the parts of your body to provide this stable base. Anything can be used as a base: your knees, buttocks, hips, arms, head, or any part of your body. A stable base permits you to generate more power and control, and a fluid base permits you to flow from one move to another, all the while maintaining control of the situation. Also, as part of a stable base, work off the balls of your feet, using your toes to grip the mat. Don't put the dorsal surface, that's the top of your foot, on the mat. Work off the balls of your feet and toes to assist you in stability, as well as in moving more effectively. Use your fitness as a weapon. The better conditioning you have, and in all aspects of fitness, strength, cardio, everything, the better you'll control your opponent and apply your technical skills. There's an old saying that's true: fatigue makes cowards of us all. And this is true in every sport, especially judo, grappling, and the combat sports. If an opponent is physically spent and primarily concerned with surviving, his mind is not on beating you, and this gives you a definite advantage. An athlete with superior fitness will be better able to reflexively apply his technical skills over an opponent. Adapt to the situation and then work to control it. Use the concept of Kobuichi, where you turn a defensive situation into an offensive one. Kobuichi means that defense and offense are one and the same thing and work fluidly with each other as the situation dictates. Move seamlessly and fluidly from defense to offense and back to defense and then back to offense as necessary and as a situation arises. This is also the ability to have what is called an aggressive defense. Develop the ability to turn a defensive movement into a counterattack. Impose your will on your opponent. Make him fight your kind of fight. Make everything you do uncomfortable for your opponent so that you wear him down physically, that he not only wants to give up physically to you, he gives up mentally to you, which is very important. If you have an edge on him mentally, you own him. This also means to be relentless and aggressive in pursuing your goals in Kobuichi, where it's a fluid, seamless, from defense to offense and back to defense and back to offense as necessary as the situation arises. And this gives you the ability to control every aspect of the fight. This is how you impose your will on your opponent. Progress from one thing to the next without a hitch and be as smooth as possible when you do it. That's easier said than done. It takes a lot of training in the dojo working on transitions, switching from one move to the next in your drill training to make this really happen in a tournament. So if you do this correctly, one thing really does lead to another. So you want to transition from one position or move to another in a seamless or flowing manner, what appears to be a seamless or flowing manner, but like we said, is a result of a lot of hard work in the dojo. Much like putting pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together, work so that one move fits to the next in a sequential manner. This is chain grappling, and it's successful grappling. Have a backup plan. That's your plan B, and it's one you should be able to rely on. And the best way to develop a plan B or a backup plan is to drill in the dojo with a lot of situational drilling, where your partners present a lot of different situations to you, and you have to adapt to them and react successfully. To be able to do this takes a lot of training. So make sure you do a lot of situational drilling in the dojo so that when in a competition, you're able to adapt as necessary and go to your plan B to be able to successfully pull it off. Avoid a scramble whenever possible. Now, a scramble takes place when either athlete has the advantage. And you always want to be the athlete with the advantage and working to maintain your control over the situation and means over your opponent as well. Scrambles are inevitable, though. We've all been in them, and they happen. And when they do happen, work to gain control and improve control of position and control the situation. Never purposely lie flat on your front, face down in a prone position. In judo, we call this utsubuze, which means lying belly down on your face. This is a defensive position exclusively, and when you do this, you're vulnerable to what your opponent can do, and he's hovering over you. One of the worst places to be in any competition, any type of a grappling match, is to be lying face down on the mat with your opponent hovering over you. And when somebody does this, though, make him pay for it. He's telling you he's just waiting for the referee to call for the break in the action and to get him out of trouble. Don't let him get out of trouble. Make there be a lot of trouble for him in this position. And this is also true when going into all fours in a turtle position. While this balled up position is not as vulnerable as lying flat on your front, it's still a weak position to work from. When on the bottom, especially when you're on all fours or flat on your front, work to get to a good base and get to a better position immediately. One of the worst places to be in ground fighting is to laying face down, flat on your face, or balled up in a turtle with your opponent working above you, trying to apply a technique and a winning move, and you're just waiting to get out of trouble. Don't be that guy. Never get your head stuck between your opponent's legs or knees. This is a very vulnerable position for you. If you're on the bottom on all fours or lying flat in a prone position, you always want to work to a better base. That's an obvious thing you want to do. But make sure you get your head out from the middle. Work it to the outside on his hip so you can do a sit out, something like that. You can get to the top position. But always remember, do not get your head stuck in the middle. You will pay for it dearly. Use your head like it's a third arm. Use it to manipulate and control your opponent. You can use your head to manipulate or steer your opponent the same way you would with your hands, arms, feet, or legs. It's an appendage, so use it. You can also use your head as a point of stability when establishing a stable base on the mat, or to apply pressure to a technique to make your opponent tap out. Always know where your hands, arms, feet, and legs are. Don't lose sight of where your hands and arms are unless you're using them to manipulate and control your opponent, and you know where they are and what they're doing. Remember, everything you do in grappling must have a specific purpose, and it's often your first contact with your opponent with your hands or feet. So always have control of them and know where they are. Stay round. By staying round, you have more mobility. In many situations, you'll roll your opponent into a choke, arm lock, pin, or other submission technique. Sometimes you'll need to be more linear in your movement, but if you are too linear, you're not flexible or adaptable in your movement. By staying round, you have more flexibility of movement and freedom of movement. In other words, better and more efficient mobility. This applies to both offensive and defensive movement. And when staying round, be compact. Do not extend your hands, arms, feet, or legs too far. And this includes your head as well. Never reach out too far or extend an appendage, because doing this allows an opponent to use it as a handle to work against you. Keep your elbows close to your body and when reaching out to gain control of your opponent. Make your movement sharp and deliberate. But stay round, stay compact. That gives you more mobility. Work to control your opponent's shoulders and hips, and in doing so, you'll control your opponent's head as well. These are the key control points on the human body. This is what we call shiho in judo, the four corners, the hips and the shoulders. And in controlling the hips and the shoulders, you control your opponent's head. When doing this, you not only control his head, you control his movement. Almost always, by controlling these points, you will control the rest of your opponent's body, and you'll control the course of the contest. Use your feet and legs much in the same way you use your hands and arms. Learn to manipulate an opponent with your feet and legs. Also, use your toes in a similar way to how you use your fingers. You can also dig into the mat with your toes for stability. Everything on the human body is a handle, but in order to use these handles, it's important to use all of your appendages. We've all heard the saying, get your hooks in. It's common and it's true. Use your feet and legs to control and manipulate your opponent, but also be sure to get your hooks in using your hands as well. If an opponent is balled up tightly in a defensive turtle position, you can't get a foot or leg in to get your hook in. Use your hands and arms to maneuver or swim in to get a wrist ride or shoulder grip to control them. Think of getting your hooks in with your hands and arms as well as with your feet and your legs. And often, controlling an opponent with your feet and legs will put you in a better position to apply a submission technique. There are two old sayings when applying chokes that pretty much mean the same thing. One of them is this: before you can control your opponent's neck, you have to control his legs and hips. And another one is, all chokes start with the legs. The best way to do this is to get your hooks in with your feet and legs to control his lower extremity, his hips and his legs. If you control your opponent's lower extremities, you've taken control of his ability to get to a stable base and escape. Get your opponent's back and control him from there. Work to get behind your opponent in a ride or controlling position. He can't see what you're doing when you're behind him in a control ride. Likewise, you have a good field of vision and have more freedom of movement and mobility from this back position. Think of a pin as a time hold. You're holding your opponent to the mat for a specific period of time in order to secure a victory. And a victory can come in two ways. You can pin them, such as an ippon in judo for holding for now 20 seconds, or a pin in amateur wrestling. Or you can control them there long enough in order to apply a finishing hold, such as a submission technique. Now, osekomi translates to meaning pin, hold, or immobilize, and that's exactly what you're doing when you control an opponent with a pin. You're immobilizing him there for a period of time long enough to secure a victory by the pin, or long enough to apply a submission technique to finish him off. When working off the bottom position in newaza or in bottom guard position, work off your flanks. These are your hips and your buttocks. Position yourself so that you have as much freedom of movement and mobility as possible. And try not to be flat on your back if at all possible. Being flat on your back on the mat limits your mobility and freedom of movement. A good way to think of it is think of the mat as a wall. You limit your movement when your back is flat against the wall or the mat. And you can launch a much better aggressive attack from the bottom guard position if you have mobility and as much freedom of movement by staying on your hips and your buttocks. Stay on your flanks. So it's a good idea to have a good aggressive ground game by staying on your hips and your flanks.